Golem of Auschwitz. I first met Chaim when he was assigned to the small Krankenbau, the infirmary at Auschwitz, where I was the only doctor. He had survived in the Auschwitz killing camp for nearly 5 months. The average inmate either died or was selected for gassing within 3 months of arrival. He was thin, but still looked healthy. His most distinguishing feature was his sparkling brown eyes, which, in sharp contrast to everything around us, were full of life. Chaim told us he had always been mature for his age. Now, at 18, he appeared to be in his late 20s. When ordered by an SS guard or a capo to work, he would energetically approach the chore and do more than any other man in the detail, even if the labor was a meaningless chore like moving rocks from one pile to another. His behavior was not inspired by the cynical motto posted above the gates at Auschwitz, Arbeit macht frei, work makes you free. Chaim's motivation flowed from his deep religious belief in the dignity of labor, even if performed for the enemy, provided it did not desecrate God's name. 6 weeks after his arrival, his faith was severely tested when his enthusiasm and brawn gained him assignment to one of the most hideous commandos or work units in the camp, pulling teeth containing gold from corpses before they were burned in the crematorium. Even this gruesome work did not destroy Chaim's faith. After his first day on the job, during which he threw up green bile from his empty stomach and fainted once, he decided on religious grounds that it was wrong to hand over all this gold to the Germans. By the end of the week, he was wearing a cloth pouch tied under his scrotum. After pulling the teeth, he would toss them roughly into the pail. Sometimes the impact would cause the gold filling or crown to separate from the tooth. When 2 or 3 golden nuggets had been dislodged in this way, he would retrieve them and hold them in his palm. At an opportune moment, he transferred the gold first to his shoes and later, in the outhouse, to the secret pouch. This method was effective until the pails were about half full. Thereafter, the gold nuggets would become lost among the teeth and pieces of attached flesh. So he worked fast, and when the pails were more than half full, he ran to the hut which served as a collection point and exchanged them for empty ones. The stolen gold presented Chaim with a moral dilemma. How much gold should he use for his own benefit, including bartering for extra food? After much consideration, he concluded that religious law permitted the procurement of only enough food to maintain his current weight. He hid the rest of the gold for a purpose he hoped God would soon reveal. He used some of it to trade for a siddur, a daily prayer book. He didn't need the book to recite his prayers because he knew them by heart. But to him, the siddur was a precious link to the past, to his Hasidic home and dead parents. It symbolized a world the Nazis would never be able to destroy. After 10 weeks in this commando, Chaim had accumulated almost 1 kilo of gold, but he had also learned that his life was in danger. In order to preserve secrecy about the workings of the camp, the SS had a policy of dispatching the entire commando to the gas chambers every few months, regardless of the fitness of each member. One afternoon, in an effort to save his life, he approached the German capo in charge with a handful of shiny golden crowns, carefully selected for this purpose. Opening his palm, he flashed the gold and said in German, "I have half 1 kilo of this, if you want it." The capo raised his club to strike him, but stopped in midair, a sly smile appearing on his thin lips, and he whispered, "Walk to the latrine." Once they reached the shack, Chaim went inside while the capo stood at the entrance with his back toward the interior. "Talk," he ordered Chaim. Chaim offered to split 1 kilo of gold nuggets with him in return for transfer to the infirmary. "I hate Schweinhund stealing Jews," the German whispered. But then after a moment of silence, he gave in. "But gold is gold." He opened the palm of his hand, which he held behind his back. Chaim dropped the crowns into it, and the capo's fingers closed around them. Further negotiations commenced over the next 3 days. At one point, the capo demanded 2/3 of the cash. Chaim refused, but Chaim made sure that from each meeting, the capo walked away with a handful of gold. On Saturday, a new SS guard was posted at the collection station. As Chaim dropped off his first bucket of teeth, the capo nodded to him. Chaim returned to his station, as he had been instructed, and threw himself on the ground and started moaning. The capo came over, cursed him, and clubbed him hard across his back. He then walked away and spoke to the SS guard. After a while, he returned and ordered Chaim to his feet and told him to start walking toward the infirmary. On the way, they stopped at Chaim's barracks and divided the gold. I remember my surprise when, after a week in the infirmary, Chaim handed me a canvas bag containing almost a half kilo of gold nuggets. He said I should barter it for medicine, bandages, and food. I did, and we were rewarded by significant improvement in the infirmary conditions. After a few days, I suggested that Chaim serve as our dentist. He objected, saying that he had no formal training, but when I explained that the only service we could perform for a Jew with a bad toothache was extraction, he reluctantly agreed. After all, he had already pulled more than 30,000 teeth. Chaim's hands moved swiftly and skillfully, and he developed a reputation in the camp as a good dentist. Although he had no medication available, the inmates claimed that they felt little or no pain during an extraction. Even for impacted wisdom teeth, I marveled at how small the incisions, how quick the procedures, how beautifully he sutured the gums. It was this artistic ability to unite flesh with flesh that persuaded me to tell him an unusual dream I had had. I dreamed that all the sick people in the bay left their bunks and gathered around the wooden table where I performed minor operations. "Make us a golem," they begged me, taking parts of their bodies and placing them on the table. One man placed his arm on the table, another yanked off his head. Someone offered his entire torso, the rest of him collapsing in a heap on the floor. Soon the entire table was covered with human parts. "We need a tailor to stitch him together," shouted a tall man with a paper bandage over his eyes. Moses, the tailor, who had sewn my bar mitzvah suit, stepped forward. With a fat needle and a thick thread, he quickly stitched together a human figure. "Dr. Safra, make him live," the inmates yelled. Reluctantly, I walked over to the body, put my mouth over his mouth, and forced my breath into him. Nothing happened. And after a few breaths, I stopped. Once again, patients started shouting, "Make him live, make him live, he will save us." Again, I breathed into him and with my hands pushed and released rhythmically on both sides of his chest. On the 7th breath, his eyes opened and he started to breathe on his own. The inmates cheered as the golem slowly stood up, got off the table, and took his first awkward steps. He slowly walked toward the shelf where we kept the medicines. He reached for a bottle of peroxide and drank it. Raising his arms, waving them wildly, he walked out of the infirmary. He wrecked a crematorium, ripped out the tracks on which the transports arrived, destroyed a section of electric fence, and opened the camp gates. But it was only I who ran through the gates to freedom.